right, everybody. Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. Yeah, Cajun crab. Welcome to Tauzy Presents Tricks of the Trade Social. I will be talking about the social pillar of D&D today. So if you have any questions, I've got a whole bunch of questions to get through. But I'm more than willing to answer some more. So if you have questions, put them in the chat. Welcome, welcome, everybody. What's up, Trey? Welcome, everybody. Say hi on the chat so I know who's here. Okay. How's my mic? How's my mic? Josh, how are we doing? Mic is good? Okay, great. All right. All right, so let's do announcements real quick. I think you're a fan or AC2. Whoa, that's crazy. Wow, you're picking up everything in my room. Let me just drop that a little bit then. Okay, announcements. July 16th is resub day. Please check your sub status. Please note the price has gone up. I have no control over that, but the price has gone up from $5 to $6, essentially. So consider using your free Prime sub account. Oh, thanks for the sub. Appreciate that, Mr. Barely there. Appreciate that, buddy. That's it, 5 months. Appreciate that, man. Use your free Prime sub on Tuesday. That'd be great. Thank you for subbing now. Appreciate that. July 16th is also Planescapers at 9 p.m. PT. Derek Denicola will be our guest again, so come hang out with the crew then. That'd be totally rad. July 17th, I'll be finishing Quake 2, The Call of the Machine. It's the best expansion of Quake 2, especially the last level. If you can't draw inspiration from games like this, I don't know what to tell you, because it's incredible, especially the last level. It's so good. So come watch. Come watch on Wednesday night. And then July 18th, Tomb of Annihilation continues with a Pterodon and Plesiosaurus attack on the River Socian Star. So come hang out with our Thursday crew. All right, so let's get to it. Let's get to these questions. We're talking about, and most of these questions are about the social pillar. So let's get to it. All right. When adjudicating social encounters, often are good or fun reaction that fits a skill check. Let me copy these and put them into the chat. There we go. When adjudicating social encounters, often a good or fun reaction that fits a skill check requires you to change something about that character slightly, like writing a backstory to better fit the scene that works best in the movie. Do you disagree? And if you don't, how do you weigh that against necessary characterizations for the plot? I would say I'm big on changing whatever you need to change. It goes for combat, like design never stops, right? Design never stops for combat, exploration, or social, right? It feels a little weird when you get to backstory, because if you're doing backstory for so long and then you change it, it might require some retcons. And if it's too many retcons, just like in combat, that if you're like, 2 rounds ahead and you're like, oh, 2 rounds back, can I change this thing? The answer might be no, right? Same kind of thing with social. It might be no if it changes, if there's too much of a butterfly effect going on, right? But for the most part, I'm all about that, so I don't disagree. I agree with that. I would just say for that, and this is a note I need to take, is that you need to take notes while you're doing that. If you're making changes that change NPCs, change their characters, you need to make some notes while you're doing that sort of thing. That's what I would say. Okay, more questions. Let's get to it. 1 second. Boop-a-doop. How do you deal with a Nat 1 social skill check on the absolutely perfect argument for the moment? Perhaps better asked, when do you decide not to roll a social check and say, no, that just works? I think it just matters. It just depends on the situation, really. But honestly, Nat 1 social skill checks are not a problem. Nat 1s create more drama. Nat 1s are great for the game. There's a reason that the 1 to 20 system works, and that 1s are very important, and that 20s are very important. It's why I put in a D100 system that says, like, how do we make these even more important? How do we make these more impactful? What if I attach another role to this that you have the option of making even more dramatic? So, you know, it's even people. There's like that running thing that like Han Solo is a character with like 18 charisma, but always fails his checks. so, yeah, it's kind of like that. It's okay if you keep failing. It just leads to more story. I'm a big proponent of the powered by the apocalypse idea, and it's kind of going through a lot of TTRPGs right now. It's just like fails or successes just lead to more complications. It doesn't matter if it's a fail or a success. It just leads to more things happening. It's a boring conversation. Exactly. Yes. Yeah, he gets on that mic and he's terrible. But normally he could woo anyone. But for some reason he gets on a mic as a stormtrooper and he can't do anything. Yeah, he rolled a nat 1. It's okay. In that case, it just leads to a fight. Sometimes it just leads to a fight. Sometimes nat 1s just lead to really fun fights, and that's okay. Let's get going. It's definitely a nat 1 scene. It's a nat 1 improv scene too, which is the best. What are some strategies that you have for blending social and combat scenes, i.e. a fight where you could swing a key player or earn a temp truce with the right check? Blending social and combat scenes, fight where you can swing a key player or earn a temporary truce with the right check. I mean, I'll talk about this later, but like, you know, I'll talk about this later, but social combat and exploration are not separate ideas. They're not separate things where now you're in this world or now you're in this world. Anytime you're in a social thing, the tension could always be there and the potential for a fight can always happen. Anytime you're exploring, you never know who you might come up against and maybe have a talk with or maybe fight. And whenever you're fighting, the role playing never ends. So you're constantly talking during a fight as well. There's a reason why villains monologue in movies and in any media, right? It doesn't happen in real life. No one, but it's fun. It makes things more interesting. So they're not separate things. They are part of the same thing. So there's not a real strategy. It's just to understand that like it's all fluid, right? It's all fluid, man. Social combat and exploration are all pillars. I think pillars is a great name for them too, because what they're really doing is supporting those three things. The three pillars support game structure. Yeah, they're not three spheres upon which you can only exist in one of them. How do you help characters speak up? Oh, this is a good question. I like this a lot. How do you help characters speak up when you feel would speak up, but their players just need a cue or feel that they aren't stepping on toes, or need to feel that they aren't stepping on toes? Gently is my advice there. I'm going to talk about this later too, but most people view this as a role-playing game, as in ROLE, but there's a minority of players out here who just view D&D 5e and any TTRPG as a role-playing game, as in ROLL, as in I'm just here to roll dice, man. So I would say gently. And you'll get a feel for it as a DM, but as you're DMing people who are, you know, shy, or just haven't done it very often, or have no interest in really jumping into the role, ROLE. They're just there to feel the vibe, to feel the atmosphere of other people role playing, and I think that's legitimate. I don't think that's something that needs to change. I think that's a legitimate way to play this game, and that's not every DM will feel that way. That's just me. I feel that that's a legitimate way to approach the game, so I don't force it. But I will hand out breadcrumbs every now and then. Like, you succeeded very well in that persuasion. Would you mind giving us a taste on what you said? Or you did so terribly. Give me a taste of how badly you screwed up that deception. Right? You can hand out breadcrumbs and just make it fun. That's the big thing. Don't force feed it. Just gentle breadcrumbings. Yes, like a witch just luring children back to the candy house. However that horrifying tale goes. Okay, let's keep going. I got so many questions. All right, here we go. What is your advice to players that want to participate in social encounters and perhaps even play a leadership role in the group, but don't want their character to invest in COD? Okay, I have a problem with this one because this one comes up every now and then. I had a player, not to be named, it's no one in this chat, and I actually don't play with this player anymore. Not for this reason, actually a really good player, but he had an issue where he was mad at the game, the mechanics of the game, because he did want to have a COD player. He wanted to have a player who was a face, but did nothing to improve the fact that they weren't a face, right? The game gives you so many tools, and I give you so many tools. The game gives you so many tools to be a face in this game, even without being. Well, there's so many. Okay, so there's racial features, right? Some races are just better at it. Some have some features that help them out. There's feats. If you allow feats, I allow feats. There's skills. There are skills that you can take. Anybody can take every skill, which is a brilliant way to play this game. That's how it should be done. Anybody can take every skill. And you can take a custom background, which lets you take even more skills, right? There's the feat skilled, which is highly underutilized in this game. Then there's also your COD mod, right? So there's so many things. There's multi-classing. There's so many things that can make you a better face in this game. To throw your hands up and say like, well, I don't want to put my points in COD. You don't have to put your points in COD, but there's other things you can do. I recommend, if you want something of a strong persuasion or deception or performance or intimidation, all the COD skills out there, that you do give yourself a 10 or a 12. Not everything has to be a 16 or an 8, right? Give yourself a 10 or a 12 or maybe even a 14. Find a way to give yourself expertise or some sort of skill bonus. Get yourself a racial bonus in there. Your PC should be built to support your social. Yes, exactly. This game is pretty basic in terms of D&D, but there's some crunch in here. So there's other ways you can support even having a lower COD and being a face. You can be a face and have a 10 COD. There's ways to do it in the game. You won't roll as high, obviously, but you know, that's okay. It's okay. That's my advice. My advice is the game gives you enough tools. And I give you enough tools. You can change your character every time you level. That's huge. That's so huge. If something's not working, change it. Follow-up question of that. Is it okay to play that character who drives some scenes forward without being COD, the social button pusher who enables the COD character? Yes. Yes, because what will happen is you, as the person who doesn't have the COD, who doesn't have the skills, will start failing those roles. And the person who is the face, who might be shy enough to be the face, exactly. The person who's shy and doesn't know how to be the face will suddenly rise up. They'll be like, oh God, this guy doesn't know what they're doing. He didn't build it right. I have to step up. And that person will step up. They'll push you aside and be like, okay, let me speak. I took points in this. Let me do this. And it's okay. It's actually good for the game, for the person who's not the face, to make decisions every now and then. It's fun because they can succeed. It's a D20 system. There's a lot of numbers in there. Okay, 1 second. Oh, follow-up question to that. Is it okay to play that character who drives scenes forward without being COD? Yes, because I just answered that. Okay. Let's see. And CHA. We're talking about CHA, not a loud noise a bird makes. I've seen you use dying words to great effect when you want an NPC to share, emphasize a plot detail as they perish. Do you have advice on how to best use this narrative tool? My advice, yes, welcome, Latiku. My advice is a lot. Again, people don't have dying words in real life. It doesn't really happen as much. I imagine my dying words, if I were getting stabbed, would be, "Oh God, I'm being stabbed." Those are, get it out. Oh God, so much blood. What's up, man? But in a dramatic game that we're playing, a lot of your villains, your NPCs, should say something to push the plot forward. Why not? Otherwise they just die. Yeah. Yes. Okay, let's keep going. Still have a lot of questions. And keep asking questions on the chat if you need to. Totally fine. My cult brothers would be successful and avenge me. They can say that. They can. My current Tomb of Annihilation character has been showing interest in one of your NPCs. This is more for laughs at a narrative thread I want to promote. That said, have you tried to run a campaign where PC's love interest is part of the plot? If so, how did it turn out? I have. I'll talk about this later, but this applies to like flaws or vulnerability that your character can show inside a game. It's great to have a love interest because then you can take that love interest away. Then you can, put them in a tower somewhere, or you can have like your PC's boyfriend is suddenly kidnapped by the Orc Raiders, and then that becomes part of the plot. It did happen in one of my campaigns. Oh, appreciate that, man. Appreciate that. You can. God, there's so many things you can do with that. It just makes it more interesting. Does it make your character more vulnerable? Yes. That's interesting. Do that. Is it a weakness for your character? Yes, but that's okay. Thank you, Latico. Appreciate that. Okay. And it turned out in the game that somebody... Oh, nice, dude. Appreciate that. Family dinner. Excellent. Family dinner is an improv group I was a part of. Latico, who are you? Do you mind? You don't have to. Don't worry about it. Let's see. Vetrano, what up, David? What up, buddy? Let's see. The PC's love interest in the game turned out well. I did kidnap him, and they got to save him. And it was rad. Super duper rad. It's a type of thing I could do more in. It's the type of thing I want to do more of. But we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Okay. Okay, let's get into this. When doing accents and other potential stereotype reinforcing portrayals, how do you avoid straying into the offensive hurtful? So here's what you do. Don't focus on the accent yet. The order of operations is focus on the character's motivation, make them a real person, right? Things become hurtful and stereotypical and breaching into areas we're not comfortable with when we don't think about them too much, or when we don't give them enough care. So start thinking about who this character is, what do they care about, who do they care about, move from their motivation, and then you can move on to how they look, how they present themselves to the world, then give them an affectation as opposed to an accent. Are they gruff? Do they have like a smoker's habit? Do they have a whisper of a voice? Do they have a loud voice? And then we can move on to accent. That's my advice. Go to accent at the very last bit. Like, oh, and he's also got an Australian accent. I'll do that because I think it's kind of, I want it to have kind of a fun, laid back a vibe with this character, and I think an Australian accent will help promote that. There are emotional qualities to accents that are just kind of defined that way because of the way they're used, the way that the function of accents give off emotional qualities. It's just the nature of them. They have different focuses. So like an Australian accent or a Cajun accent or a Cockney accent is way in the back of the mouth. The focus is in the back of the mouth because it is more laid back. Whereas like received pronunciation, an English accent, received pronunciation is more front of the mouth because it's more formal, right? Yeah. But that's just stuff to think about. My best advice is don't worry about the accent, instead worry about the character's motivation. Who is this person? And then bleed into the affectations and accents after that. Give an example of. Like what? Okay, well, I'll give you an example. Okay. Okay, I'll take a back versus front of mouth. Yes, okay, so Cajun accent, which I'm very familiar with, is middle of the mouth to back of the mouth, but it's also closing the nose. It's very lazy. It's super duper lazy. It's super duper, not lazy as in the people are lazy. Lazy as in the accent is just laid back and easygoing, right? It's like to do a Cajun accent, it's very strange. You take your standard Southern accent and you give it a cold. You close up the nose, bro, right? So when doing accents, other potential stereotype reinforcing portrayals, this is how you do a Cajun accent. Everything here is closed up, okay? And it's all coming from the middle of the mouth. True? That's how it's done, okay? And you'll feel it once you start doing accents like the people lazy got it. No, you'll feel it when you start doing accents like, oh, this accent really, it stays like right here, or it's way back here. This accent's all in the nose. You'll feel it when you start doing that. Okay. Okay. Also, I would say for accents, I would say like, just in terms of accents, I stick to like North America, the ones I'm pretty good at, the UK, specifically the British Isles in general, and then a couple other places that I'm comfortable with. But then I'm also trying to branch out from there. It's just a lot. Honestly, you could just stay in the British Isles, and you'll never master them all. Never. And that's a pretty good idea because there's so many accents from the British Isles. Okay. Let's see. It's okay it's okay as a player to not have an accent. It's okay as a DM to not do accents. If you're not comfortable with accents, don't worry about it. It's completely fine to just describe an accent. He has an accent. He's got more of a. This character has more of a rural accent, and his speech pattern is a little bit slower. Almost as if he kind of has a slow air about him because he's constantly judging the environment around him. You can just describe their accent as opposed to doing it, and then you just continue. It's totally fine. How do you set groups up for social success? Stuff like the house rules is awesome, especially make a character that wants to advance in a group. No non-consensual PvP, but how do you navigate this as a session campaign progresses? How do I navigate this as a session campaign progresses? I think I need more clarification on this question. How do you set up groups for social success? I think the way the game is built, it kind of does. It does set up for there to be faces in the group, which I think is good for a game. I think it's good to have. Some people rub up against it. They're like, why is there one person always speaking for the group? Because in groups, there's usually one person who's better at it. It doesn't mean that person always has to do it. I would say it's okay to. Here's an answer. I would say just like hot potato, it's okay to like share the spotlight, even if the person, it's usually on the face who's going to do something, but it's okay, especially if characters break away from the group, to shine the spotlight on different characters in social situations. Again, it's okay if their characters are bad at it. That's part of the fun. Yeah, that's what I would say. Because it does happen. As many times as people say, don't split up the party, the parties do split up. Follow up, if the group doesn't have a face, do you ever present an NPC to fill that role? No. I would say don't do that. No. Because then it's just the DM talking to themselves. Don't do that. It's okay if they don't have a face. That's part of the fun. Maybe they're just bad at it. D&D sets it up so that you always have the choice of pulling out your spells and pulling out your swords. So, even if you're bad at it. And honestly, like, most social roles aren't, I think the parameters are a little bit weird. I think the perception of the parameters are vastly hyperbolized. I think people think like, oh, I rolled a 27 on my persuasion, I'm king of the world now, or I rolled a nat 1, all of the hordes are coming to kill me. It's not, I don't think it's usually that dramatic. It's okay if you fail, it's not the end of the world. And if you succeed on a check, if the GM asks you to roll a charisma check, if and only when they ask you to roll, for some reason persuasion, intimidation, deception, and performance, players suddenly think that they have the right to roll even without asking or something. I don't know why. I don't really know why, but it's still, you need to wait for the DM to give you permission. Because a player who says, I'm going to roll this, they expect a reward if they roll really high, when there might not be one. Right? So only roll when the DM says to roll. If the group doesn't have a face, then they have to find a non-conversation solution. Exactly. Or it's a conversational solution that goes bad. And maybe there's a different solution that happens, right? Maybe you fail towards success, or maybe you succeed towards failure, right? These things don't have to be so diametrically opposed. All it means is more obstacles in the future. Think about it that way. That's the best way to think about it. Okay. Ooh, wow, this is a rough question. This one's a rough one. Here we go. Have you ever had to split up a group because they weren't a good fit with each other? How do you approach these difficult conversations? I haven't had so far, because I've had players leave because they're just not a fit with me. But with other party members, it hasn't come up yet. It will. Eventually it will. But some people will be like, I really don't want to play with this player anymore. We're just not a good fit. And that's okay. I think I'd be open to that, to be like, okay, let me fit you in a different group. This is a game where you're not required to play. You don't have to play with other people. Same thing goes for your live games. If you're with other people and you don't enjoy it, don't be with those people. If you can't work it out, or you can't find a solution, then you can't find a solution, man. Yeah. That's a good question, though, because it does happen. It does happen where you're like, I can't play with this player. I've been there. Not a lot, but I've been there where I'm like, I can't play with this person. Can't do it. Okay. Let's see. How many more questions I got? I got a lot of questions, guys. A lot of questions coming in. I might be here for a bit. Here we go. What's your follow-up, buddy? Go ahead. I'm going to go with the next question, and then I'll read your follow-up. Let's see. Okay, I'll read yours first, Trey. What advice would you give a player who does feel like they can't play with another member, but they don't want to quit the group or the DM? Ugh. It's rough. It's just really hard. Honestly, I would talk to your DM first, see if they can come up with a solution. And then maybe talk to the other member as adults. Just be like, hey, what's going on here? How do I help? How do I support? Always come with positivity. Don't come with negative. Negative doesn't work. It doesn't work with this kind of thing, especially if it's a problem player. It doesn't help to be negative versus them. I've tried. That doesn't work. Instead, try to offer how to support best. And if that still doesn't work, you got to find another group. You just got to find another group, man. I know it sucks, but you're just going to be miserable. Your sessions campaigns have been nicely balanced for me, but more combat using my character prowess or lack thereof to solve problems. But that may not work for everyone. Do you find it better to recommend people that want more role-playing and less combat contests of wills to find in their DM? Or have you tried to create group opportunities for different styles? In either case, how did it go? I'm unapologetically a combat DM. I'm definitely a combat. I think like in the spheres, in the support columns, combat definitely is stronger in my games. A lot of that has to do with that fact that I do Roll20, and Roll20 just leads. It just makes me go like, how crunchy can I make this combat? I love it. I enjoy the combat in 5e, so I just love it. I would recommend, obviously there's a lot more DMs out there who are probably more role-playing focused. So yeah, I could recommend some DMs to people who just want more role-playing. And then there's like Planescapers, which is more role-playing focused, but even that has a lot of combat in it. But there's a lot more sessions where who's done my favorite characters or not. I'm more combat, I think, than most DMs out there. I think, but not by much. 5e just leans towards a lot of combat. But there's Planescapers has a lot of role playing opportunities. There's a lot of shows in Planescapers, like last week, where there was no combat at all. A lot of that's just because it's a live stream game, so it's just more interesting for it to be more role playing heavy. I think, because a live game is a lot more mechanical work for the DM, considerably more work. So role playing is just easier. But yeah, I enjoy being in combat. I enjoy being a combat DM. I'm a combat DM. I'm also a Monty Hall DM. I definitely give out more magical items than other DMs. Every session of games have leaves one combat encounter. Yeah. I'm also very fast. I'm also very. I'm relatively quick at Roll20. Not everybody's as fast as me. And there are pros and cons to that. Like I skip your turns all the time. I will skip your turn if you play with me. I don't mean anything about it. You just gotta be giant in the spot. Otherwise, I'm gonna skip your turn. Okay. Have you ever given a villain a truly evil social trait? I love this question. Like racism, or do you prefer leaving the actual evils of the world out of your fantasy game? I think as long as you're open with your players about it, especially on like a session 0, that this is okay. Your villains should be evil. They should be. The last season of Stranger Things, season 4 is the last one, is the best season because they make the villain really evil. He's real bad. He's really, really bad. Villain should be evil. Otherwise, it's goofy Disney evil. And I think there's a time and a place for goofy Disney evil. If your DM and you're like, I don't care which one, and your players they don't want to see truly brutal stuff, don't put it in there, right? But yes, your players, the more evil your villains get, the more your players will be immersed, and they'll be the more they will want to overcome whatever obstacles the villain puts in front of them. Yeah, that should be. Yeah, I think, for example, stay tuned for Planescapers, because once they do the Dragonlance campaign, there's some rough stuff in there. The Dragonlance portion of Planescapers. Dragonlance has a lot to do with racism. If you go back and read the books, it ain't pretty. The only reason that the goodly forces in Dragonlance stands a chance is because they band together to get rid of the supremacists of Takhisis. It gets real rough. Even in those books as a kid, I was like, this is some rough stuff. So it's okay. I would say there's still some things that I wouldn't put in your game, even as evil as they are. Like sexual abuse should not be in any game. If you allude to it, make sure you go to black. Make sure you don't describe these things. there's a couple other things. I just make sure with your players, every table's gonna be different, but just make sure your players that they understand and you understand that you want to put this type of thing in there to make it more dramatically fulfilling. And if they have a problem with it, then you need to deal with that. You need to understand that even though you might have this idea of what you want, you might need to evolve it, right? Session 0 is very important. Yes. Similar to one of Josh's questions, what kind of roleplay advice would you give to player characters with low charisma? I'll hit this one again because it does bear repeating. This does not. If you have a low charisma, if you're not a face, it doesn't mean you can't interact with the world. Your failures that you'll have will be offset by your successes, and your failures and your successes just lead to more dramatic fun. It's okay. And we'll talk about like flaws and ways that you can do this later on as well. So don't be afraid to interact with the world or with the other players, even though you can't, even though you suck at it, so to speak. People with low charisma talk all the time. Yeah. Let's see. Have you ever noticed in-person games lead to stronger or more solid real-life friendships more than online games? Or the opposite, have you ever noticed a social group break up over something in-game? Yes and yes. It's more immediate and dramatic when you play live. It is better. Playing live is just better. It's easier for the DM to play on Roll20, to play online, or any other tabletop, because you have so many tools at your disposal. When you do it live, when I do it live, it's definitely more expensive because I'm asked to do so much more. You just have to do so much more that the computer is doing for you. You don't have any of that anymore. And I would say, speaking to people across the table as opposed to speaking to them over Zoom or over any video is immediately stronger. And yes, there absolutely been social groups breaking up over something in game. Yeah, I think the strongest selling point I would have for myself as a pro DMer and anybody who wants to get into professional DMing is that you will finish your games if you're dedicated to it, and your players have a financial obligation to be in your games. They will finish their campaigns, and I've been part of so many campaigns that just peter out, and it's because people don't. It's just treated as a hobby. It's just treated as the thing where you don't have to finish it. Where a player in a group might go, this player kind of bothers me, or I didn't really like that last session. I don't know if I want to finish it. It happens to a lot of young people, a lot of people whose schedules are crazy. Problem with live games is that it's difficult. It's a lot more difficult to schedule, and then things just fall apart. It just happens all the time. So yes, I've been a part of a whole bunch of social groups that break up over something in the game. Yeah. Yes. I've had people got into fist fights over stupid D&D stuff. Real dumb. Real dumb. Okay. These questions are great. Here we go. While it's easy to arbitrate how having a low or high physical ability score impacts the portrayal of a character, I have found it difficult to rule that having a low int, whiz, or ca should prevent a player from proposing good ideas or presenting convincing arguments. What's your take? Okay, so here's the deal. They designed this game very well. It used to be in the old school games that the default of rolling a character was you literally rolled 46 or 3d6. You rolled 3d6 and that was your number, or you rolled 46 and you take the highest, you drop the lowest, right? That leads to sometimes having 4s, 5s, and 6s in ability scores. That's all gone, with the default being standard array or point buy. Those are the defaults of the game. You can still roll in some groups, but the defaults are standard array, and point buy. The lowest you can get in standard array and point buy is 8. 8 is slightly below average. 8 is C minus, possibly a D plus. It's still, D plus is for diploma, right? You're still okay. If you have a low int of 8, you are not dumb. Even if you have 8 int, 8 whiz, 8 ka, that just means you're slightly below an average person. I've seen a lot of people play like their characters just have 0 brains and they just do stupid stuff because they've got an 8. An 8 in intelligence means you are not formally educated. An 8 in wisdom means you have some problems with street smarts. But it doesn't mean your character's broken, and it certainly doesn't mean you can't every now and then come up with good ideas or convincing arguments for the group. There's nothing in the game that says that this is that should be frowned upon. So come up with your ideas. Yeah, there's nothing. I would say on the flip side, if you have, say, like in a crazy high wisdom, I like when players do this. They're like, my wisdom's a 20. Every now and then it's okay when a player does this. Like, my wisdom's a 20. I want to roll to see if I know something. If my player character would know something that I don't, because I'm just not getting this particular part of the campaign. Would my player know something better? Can I roll an insight for that or something like that? I'm okay with things like that. But again, those low scores are not as low as you think. You're not as dumb. Your character's not as dumb as you think they are. Okay. Fantasy games are often portrayed as occurring in times and environments where solving problems with violence is common and laws lean towards might makes right. Have you run campaigns where law enforcement intended to limit this behavior? If so, did that in turn lend itself to more social interactions? And did the table enjoy it as much as your less restrictive campaigns? This would be like a lot of this is like a heavy urban environment where law enforcement is a bit stronger and they have a tighter control onto they have a tighter control on the populace. So might makes right is kind of shoved under the table, or it's just not as strong, or it's not on the surface. It's always might makes right is always there. That's always there. Sorry. I don't do a lot of urban campaigns. I mean, Sigil isn't a giant urban environment, but typically when I play a Planescapers game, as you've seen it, they go away from Sigil. They go to like the fringes of some crazy plane. That's what the game's all about. I don't run a lot of urban campaigns. I don't run a lot where law enforcement limits that, because I think 5e lends. A lot of 5e is just built towards solve this with your sword. It's just the game. It's the game. If you can't solve it with your tongue, solve it with your sword. I would say if you're constantly doing, I don't know though, D&D 5e works for it. I've been a part of games where there just isn't a lot of combat. And it isn't the game for me. I need every now and then to test the metal. I just think it works better. But that doesn't mean don't do it. Do it. Go if you want to be a DM in an urban campaign where there's a lot more detective work, subterfuge, political intrigue. These are things that I'm not terribly into those. They're just not my fortes. But I very much respect them. Put them in your campaign. Do it. Okay. Let's get into what I have to say. That's a lot. Thank you for all the questions, everybody. Appreciate that. Thank you for those questions. Okay. Traits, flaws, bonds, and ideals. Let's talk about social stuff. Let's talk about the things that they give you in D&D right off the bat. Because I think I don't stress this, and maybe this is a problem that I probably should stress some more. But I don't like to force it, which is why I don't stress these. But Traits, flaws, bonds, and ideals. This is some of the best design in 5e are with these. Because it really is an intro into like a Theater 101 class. They're all important, you know, traits, flaws, bonds, ideals. I don't like to enforce them on the player base. I like to gently prod people into these, but these are great starting off points. Even more so than the 9 alignments, which I still think are valuable, but these are much more valuable. Some people are just here to roll dice, but if you like flaws, bonds, and ideals, answer specific questions about your character. Who do you care about? That is your bond, right? Who do you care about in this game? Why and how do you care so much about them? That has to do with ideals and traits, right? Notice that one of these questions is not, do you care? Because the answer to do you care should always be an affirmative without question. If the answer to the question is, do you care? And your answer is, no, I don't care. Well, then retire that character and create a character who does care. Because you're playing in a game, you're playing a group-based game. So take your single player, your MC, your main character concept, and go play a video game. Because that's what that's for. This is a game with other people, and you are not the main character. You're not. That's what makes D&D so strong, is that it's not a main character game. It is a group-based game. But who do you care about? That's your bond. Why and how do you care about them so much? That's your ideal, maybe your trait. And what is getting in the way of you caring? That's your flaw. And you get multiple flaws, multiple bonds. It doesn't have to be one of each, but one of each is a good place to start. This is, again, very good design. One of each of these. Flaws are the trickiest because you could screw yourself and you could screw the group dynamic by selecting bad flaws. There are bad flaws out there. What I mean by bad flaws is bad for the construction of the game, bad for the players at the table, not the PCs. Some terrible flaws I wouldn't take, include like an intense desire to steal from fellow party members, the greedy rogue. I've been a part of parties where the rogue decided to steal from other PCs and everyone collectively groaned. If someone groans that bad during your flaw, it's probably a bad flaw. You probably should change your flaw. Charging your fellow mates for services, the merc with no morals, or a general need to hog the spotlight and ruin other moments from other players. Those are rough flaws. Generally speaking, the flaws that they give you, like the ideas for flaws in the book, are great. Use those flaws and build from there. But good flaws typically include so this is a big thing. TLDR, good flaws typically include the world around the PC and not other player characters. Don't make your flaws about the other player characters. You will aggravate the other players if you do that. Instead, make it about the world, right? When I drink, I become too boisterous. I'm a neat freak and I can't stand getting my hands dirty in all these dungeons out there. What do I do, right? And if you have something like that, if you have a flaw that essentially is an obstacle, remember, a flaw is not something that stops you in your tracks permanently. It's something to take with you and overcome on occasion, right? If you are a neat freak and you don't like getting dirty, you should get dirty. It's Dungeons and Dragons. Like, it's gonna get gross. You're gonna get blood and mud all over you. Freak out, have an honest reaction to that, but keep doing the bad thing. That's what makes it engaging and fun and funny. Fish out of water is a funny concept because the fish is out of the water. If it gets back in the water, we lost the concept. We lost the thread, right? Are consumed flaws as part of accepting other gifts. It's true. Yes. That's exactly right. Yeah. That's what makes in the Amber Temple, you can take flaws as part of accepting gifts. Small spoiler, but it's incredible, right? It's what makes that dungeon so fun. It's my favorite dungeon in all of D&D, easily. Bonds. Right. So those are flaws. Right. Pick good flaws. Don't pick terrible flaws. Pick flaws that include the world, not the other player characters, for the most part. Yes, exactly. That's such a good point, David. Yeah, these characters have had flaws all their life. They should be able to navigate them. Right. That's exactly right. Yeah, your flaws are also traits, and a lot of traits you can choose from are also flaws, right? Um, yeah, man, that's such a good point. Yeah, I had in one of my one shots, I had a neat freak take prestidigitation, and he was literally cleaning the dungeon as he was walking through it, and it made for great fodder. It made for great communication. It made for great play. Let's see. Okay, bonds. Choose someone or someones in the party to truly care about. Choose someone or something to care about. The focus of a character should typically be someone else and not themselves. Care about someone else, right? The pit traps of evil or selfish characters lead to some situations that are not ideal. Okay, I don't like to say don't be evil or don't be selfish or any neutral alignment that kind of leads towards selfishness. But there are pit traps with evil. There are real pit traps. As long as you're focusing on supporting the group, you can be evil towards the world, but just understand you're meant to be supportive towards your group. And so a problem with picking evil is that sometimes those things are in conflict, which is great. Conflict is fun. But if you choose evil towards the party, you're going to end up with problems. You're going to end up with meta problems. Ideals and traits. So those are flaws and bonds, and then ideals and traits. Ideals and traits further define your character and start to mold you. But don't feel constrained by those, and perhaps they change over the course of your adventuring career. If one of your traits is, and again, it kind of feels like a flaw, I see every bar as an opportunity to get into a fight. Like that's how I greet a town. Maybe that trait changes after you've been knocked unconscious too many times, or you've hurt people you care about, and so maybe it becomes like, in turn, now I just pay for people's drinks. When I enter a new town, I start to get into a fight, and then I pay for new drinks, or get into a fight, and then I buy everyone a drink afterwards. Right? Maybe your trait changes. But traits are great. Traits I would say are a good place to ideals, bonds, flaws are great. Traits is just a good way to introduce your NPCs to your PCs. This character has a scar on his face, and he appears to be cognizant of it and a little bit insecure about it, right? A trait can also lead to a physical thing about your NPC. They have a patch. They have a limp. They have this. They're always wearing huge cloaks, huge animal skin cloaks. You just need to give them one thing. When you're creating NPCs, just give them one thing that they'll remember about that character. One thing at a time. Yeah. Some people consider social and combat to be separate things, perhaps even at odds with each other. What are your thoughts on a character self-imposing a role, say con, to resist a habit or a character trait? What? What are your thoughts on a character self-imposing a role, say con, to resist a habit or a character trait? I love stuff like that. I see what you mean. I love stuff like that. Yeah. There's a brothel over there. I can't resist brothels. I make a wisdom saving throw. Yeah. Yeah, do it. That's totally fine. I think it's great. Anytime you give yourself a flaw, give yourself a weakness to your character, it's going to lead towards the best things. Does it give you a weakness? Yes, and that's what's great about it. Okay, on social and combat and exploration. Some people consider social and combat to be separate things, perhaps even at odds with each other. I think I've talked about this. I disagree. I think when social events happen, the threat of combat can hang in the air. At the same time, when combat is occurring, the role-playing never has to stop. Villains can monologue and so can the players, while spells and swords are swinging. And exploration never ends. It's always happening regardless of talking or stabbing. Yeah? Okay. Also, don't fret too much over the percentages, right? Or what should occur throughout a game. You do not need to hit the 33% combat, 33% exploration, 33% social. These will rarely happen anyway, and nobody is handing out medals for getting those numbers right. Nothing. Jeremy Crawford's not going to burst down your door and hand you a medal for getting it correct. There is no getting it correct. It's a game, right? Okay. So creating your NPCs so they can have so you can have interesting social encounters. Create them from the ground up. You work with a primary motivation for your characters, whatever your NPC is. What do they care about? Who do they care about? Why do they care about them? And what is getting in the way of them caring about them? Flaws, traits, bonds, and ideals. Work with them while you're creating your character, right? And then give them a trait to distinguish themselves at the end. Give them something to accentuate themselves. And then work in an affectation. How do they sound? Not what accent. How do they sound? How do they present themselves to the world vocally? And then maybe an accent. That's how you create an NPC. That's at least how I create an NPC. Awesome? Yeah. And don't stress out too much about it. It's just a game. Some of your characters will work, some of them won't work. Change them. Change them up. It's okay to retcon things. That's it. That's all I have for you guys. That's a good hour of me yapping. No more yapping. Stay tuned. Back to the announcements. Resub day is the 16th. Come sub into the channel on this coming Tuesday and hang out with our Planescapers. Thank you, David, for coming in, buddy. Appreciate that. We got Planescapers on the 16th at 9 p.m. PT. And then I will be streaming Quake 2 on the 17th, and then Tomb of Annihilation, our Thursday crew, on the 18th at 5:30 p.m. Check it out. All right. That's it for you guys. Thank you.